I'm here tonight to talk to everyone here and the people on Zoom about a project that the towns of Marshfield and Duxbury have been working on in conjunction with Coastal Zone Management. It's been a little bit more than 3 years we've been working on this project. It is a project to build shoreline resiliency in the towns of Marshfield and Duxbury through beach and dune nourishment. We've already introduced the town planner from Duxbury, Chris Ryan, Greg Guimond, town planner in Marshfield. Jason Bertner from CZM is here. And those guys have worked tirelessly on this project to keep it moving forward for the past 3 years. And you know, the success of the project is in no small part due to their efforts. So very much appreciated. So I have about a 20-minute presentation to give, and then we'll open the floor up to questions. Hi, are you IT?
I am. And more. Yes.
So does it make sense to try to move this, get this off the screen so the people in the room can see what's behind that?
Yes.
It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, it is, I agree with that.
It's not on this screen though.
So let's go in here,
Ah, it was the little room.
It's the little room.
Yeah, that's the control.
I'm going to go ahead and we can, hopefully that will disappear shortly. How about that?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
How's that? Is that better?
Perfect, thank you.
Don't leave.
All right, I'll
Okay, but the slides are not advancing.
So they have like the.
So
I don't know which
we're
one
going to
of
have
these
to
laptops
advance the
is-
slides from here.
Okay, so.
I can stay here.
No, I'm here.
I can stay here.
Tell Chris and Greg, stop the next meeting at 9:30.
We got here at 6 and we thought we were all set.
This computer's not hosting.
I was
Are you hosting? Who's hosting?
I thought I was, but
Major cohort host, and she shared the screen, so she should be able to run it, but it's not.
Yeah, this screen here is not hosting it.
okay, here we go.
Oh,
That's it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How quiet it is out there. Oh.
Okay, success.
The ladies watching the birds.
Okay, so this slide has the meeting agenda on it. You know, we've had these introductory remarks. I'm going to give you a little bit of background and goals of the project. Show you the nourishment designs that we came up with. Give you an overview of the update on the permitting, where we are with the permitting, talk about next steps, and then we can open it up to questions and answers. So this slide here talks about the goals of this project. So can you see? Can you see this?
You're coming over here.
Okay, good idea. So the goals are to protect both public and private properties from storm damage, to protect the seawalls and revetments that are in both communities, to minimize wave overtopping and flooding. And so the wave overtopping is what happens when you've got a storm, the water levels are elevated, the waves hit the seawall, and those waves crash over the seawall. And that's what really causes a lot of the damage here when you do have storms. And then also goals are to restore the beach as a recreational resource and to restore the coastal ecosystem for species that use the beach like the shorebirds. I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about you know, the impacts of coastal armoring. And I would like to say that remind you all that the beaches are really critically eroded in both towns. I'm sure you all are aware of that. And one of the reasons that they are critically eroded is because the seawalls have been on site for such a long time, and they're really having a negative impact on the system. And so this slide here is an attempt to try to explain that to you. On the left-hand side, we have beaches that are natural that don't have seawalls or hard shore protection structures. And so, you know, you start out with initial profile. Can you see my cursor at all?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you start out with this initial profile. You've got a fairly wide beach. And then you have a storm, comes in and erodes that beach, or there's sea level rise. And that beach, because there's not anything hard behind it, that beach can migrate landward. So it's got about the same width as it does, you know, before the storm or before sea level rise, and it's able to migrate landward and sort of keep pace with sea level rise. That's what happens in a natural system. In Duxbury and Marshfield, we've got cases like that are on the right. So we've got seawalls that are installed, and at the time they were installed, there was a fairly wide beach out in front of those seawalls. But over time, either through storm wave erosion or sea level rise, that beach has eroded and lowered in elevation. So what happens is the waves hit the seawall and they reflect off the seawall, and that causes scour right in front of the seawall, and that causes the beaches to erode and lower in elevation. So I'm just sort of describing this as a way to sort of set the stage for why we're in the situation where we are right now. When we do have those lower beach elevations, that allows deeper water to come in during storms. That deeper water allows larger waves to impact the walls. The larger waves cause more overtopping. More overtopping causes increased damage behind the seawalls. We know that in Marshfield, we've got about 83% of the coastline is armored with seawalls or revetments, and in Duxbury, 91% of the shoreline north of Duxbury Beach Reservation is armored with seawalls. So they're extensive. I guess one of the other things that's not on these slides is that when you do have that armoring, that also eliminates a source of sediment. So in a natural system, you've got the waves hitting the dunes or coastal banks, and that provides a source of material to the beaches. But when you have that seawall there, that completely eliminates any new sources of sediment arriving at the beach. And so those are just some of the reasons why we've got critical erosion in these areas, and we're sort of in the situation we're in right now. Okay, as far as accomplishments to date, this slide here really just shows the history of the CZM grants that this project has had. We started out in FY20 with a grant for $234,000, and for that money we identified beaches in both Marshfield and Duxbury that were suitable or feasible for implementing beach nourishment, and developed engineering plans. And then in FY21 we got another grant from CZM for $281,000, and for that we prepared and filed all the permit applications. And there's 5 or 6 permit applications that these projects do need. And then in FY22, which we're just wrapping up right now, we have a $94,000 grant which funded response to agency questions and following up to ensure that the permits are going to be issued. Each one of those years we also had a program of public outreach where we had meetings like this, and Greg and Chris worked to update the town websites with information and send out flyers and do interviews and create newspaper articles and things like that just to get the word out to the public. This slide on the left shows the areas that we did identify as being suitable for beach nourishment. So in Marshfield, it's Wrexham Beach to the north. It's what we call Winslow Ave Beach. We identified Fieldston and Sunrise as suitable places for beach nourishment, but when it came time to do the permitting, we weren't able to get all of the necessary easements for access to the beach, and so we didn't proceed with permitting those 2 beaches. And then down in Bay Ave and Gurnett Road, those are, we did get all the easements signed there, and so those are included in the permitting. So those are the beaches we identified as being places where beach nourishment was feasible. So I'm just going to talk briefly about Wrexham and Winslow, and then I'm going to talk in more detail about Bay Ave and Gurnett Road, because Bay Ave and Gurnett Road are the beaches that both towns have identified as sort of priority areas where they'd like to do the construction first. So as far as Wrexham Public Beach goes, that's what this figure shows here. The yellow polygon is the footprint of the nourishment that we permitted. This is a public beach. The nourishment covers 8.2 acres. We spec'd out 33,870 cubic yards of material, and that's made up of anywhere from fine to medium grain sand with some gravel. So it's not just all fine, pristine sand. That design covers 1,650 feet of the Wrexham property and provides benefits for storm damage protection, recreation, and shorebird habitat. So that's an area that's mapped for endangered species. So this particular project would provide, more habitat for those birds there. Construction access for the work at Wrexham would come down, I don't know what's the name of that road, Parker Street, and then along the beach and to the site. And the picture on the bottom right just shows sort of the typical sediment quality that would be sourced if we were going to nourish this beach. So mostly sand, like I said, with a little bit of gravel mixed in. Okay, Winslow Ave Beach is more of a dune enhancement project. So that's between Porter Street and Wrexham Road. And it covers 4.5 acres. And it's primarily coastal dune. We designed a project that would require 17,850 cubic yards. And here, we're speccing out cobble and gravel because it's really coarse material there right now. And that's what you see in that bottom right picture, is sort of the composition of that dune area right now. And so the regulatory agencies really require us to nourish with material that's the same as what's there now. And so that's why we have to nourish it with cobble and gravel in this case. That particular footprint is 1,540 feet long, and the project would provide benefits for storm damage protection. And access for that would be down Wrexham Road. Okay, and then Bay Ave and Gurnett Road beaches. So this yellow polygon is what we've permitted for this footprint. So that starts north of Pearl Street and goes to the end of Ocean Road South in Duxbury. So it spans both towns. It covers 38.1 acres, requires 480,000 cubic yards of sand that's mixed with gravel and some cobble. So cobble is like the size of your fist or my fist. Gravel is sort of smaller than that, and then the sand size is, you all know what sand is. The project requires about almost 85,000 cubic yards of material in Marshfield and 395,000 in Duxbury. And it covers 5,090 linear feet, 900 feet in Marshfield and 4,190 in Duxbury. One thing I didn't say about the two previous footprints, Wrexham and Winslow Ave, that's all on public town of Marshfield property. So no private properties involved in those two projects. This one here, Bay Ave and Gurnett Road, requires work on 16 private properties in Marshfield and 66 properties in Duxbury. And that's all on the beach, like the seaward side of the seawalls. It's all going landward of the seawalls. It's all seaward of the seawalls. This particular project will provide benefits for storm damage protection, reduce wave overtopping, which damages the properties behind, recreation and shorebird habitat.
Leslie,
Yeah.
that's roughly 84 Bay Ave south.
Okay, thank you. All right. Access would be from the Bay Ave ramp, and they could go north or south with material there, and then also come in from the south, so just the very northern end of Duxbury Beach Reservation. That particular access route, when we start to use it, will require an agreement with DBR, but we've had conversations with them and don't expect any troubles in receiving that access agreement. It'll have to be restored when we're done, but that's typical for projects like this. Okay, as far as the design goes for the Bay Ave and Gurnett Road beaches, that's what this slide shows here. So the top graph is a cross section. This happens to be in the Marshfield area, but they basically look the same down in Duxbury. So along the x-axis, you have distance from the seawall, and then on the y-axis, you have elevation. It's not height, it's an elevation. Elevation, you can think of it as elevation above sort of mean sea level right now. You can think of it that way. And this vertical part of the black line is the seawall. So you can see in this area, the seawall extends to about elevation 16 feet. And so the design includes this horizontal or flat area here that we call a berm. And it's 90 feet wide from the seawall, so extends 90 feet out from the seawall, and it's an elevation 11. So again, the top of the seawall right now in this area is at 17. The top of the nourishment will be at 11, so 6 feet below the top of the wall. And then it extends down to meet the natural grade of the nearshore area at a slope of 15 horizontal to 1 vertical. So every 15 feet you go seaward, it drops 1 in elevation. This is an example, a picture here of sort of the sediment quality. As I said, it's a mixture of sand, gravel, and some cobble. This is a table that shows the status of the permits. So we filed separate permits for each town, and these are the agencies, I guess 4 permits before I misspoke. So 4 permits needed for this project. We have permits for both projects from the Conservation Commission, so we have orders of conditions. We have Chapter 91 permit, that's the Mass Department of Environmental Protection Waterways Division. We have the Chapter 91 permits for both projects, both towns, and we have the Coastal Zone Management permit for both towns. We are still waiting for the Army Corps of Engineers permit. A little bit of history on that. When we, as a part of this grant this year, we filed what's called an individual permit with the Army Corps of Engineers, and that gives you a permit that lasts 10 years. And you can do that work for 10 years. Just in the last, I'd say 2 or 3 months, we were advised by the Corps of Engineers that we'd be able to get our permits more quickly if we switched to something called a general permit, which is good for 5 years. So we went ahead and filed all the paperwork to get that general permit. We are still waiting on that. And I think the towns will be putting some pressure on Army Corps of Engineers using various means to try to get them to issue these permits. So that's where we are with the permitting. And then I want to talk a little bit about, sort of next steps for construction, because that really is the next step. Both towns, as I said, have identified the Bay Ave and Granite Road sections of the project as priority areas that they'd like to construct or implement first. We do know that because the project is, especially in Duxbury, is really large, we're going to have to construct it in phases. So we can't construct it all in 1 year. Reasons for that, one is because the towns don't have enough money to pay to construct it all in 1 year. Even if they get grant funding, they couldn't pay for the whole thing at once. Second thing is there's something called a time of year restriction on when we can do the work. And that's meant to protect endangered shorebirds and things that are out on the beach. So we're able to work on this project. What do I have here? September 1 to March 31st. Even if we could work that entire time, it's unlikely we could build the entire Duxbury project in 1 year. So that's another reason why the project has to be done in phases. We do know that there's grant funding to help the towns, and that's available to help them construct these projects. Jason's office, Massachusetts Coastal Zone Management, has a program, the Coastal Resiliency Grant Program, that has funded this project for the past 3 years. They just released an RFR for FY24 funding that the towns intend to apply for construction funding. The cap on that grant money is $2 million for any given project. Each town intends to apply separately. Marshfield will be looking for a $1 million grant from that Coastal Resiliency Program, and they will apply a 25% match. That will allow that will allow about construction about 55% by volume of the whole project in Marshfield. That 25% match that the town of Marshfield has is something that's been appropriated. It's something the town has. They don't have to go back to town meeting to ask for it. It's there, and they are anticipating applying it as their match for this project.
Leslie?
Yeah.
But the town is going to need to start setting aside every year at town meeting $350,000 to $500,000, so we have money available in the future for more beach nourishment, which we'll need not only for this beach, but for the other beaches that have been permitted.
Yeah, that's a really good point. In terms of Duxbury, Duxbury has built up a reserve of a bigger match, and so they're going to go for the $2 million grant. They do have the 25% match that allows them to request that $2 million grant. But again, that's not going to allow them to build the whole project. They'll only be able to build about 25% by volume of the Duxbury project. And then, as Greg said, the second to last bullet just indicates that additional funding is going to be needed in both towns. And you know, in Marshfield in the fall of 2023, if you want to go to town meeting and ask for more money for the next year, that's the time to do it. And then, you know, in out years for the town of Duxbury, 24, 25, and 26. And that would be needed all those years in order to build the entire full project. Having said all that, you know, I think what we're recommending the towns do, and they're following this, is that, you know, the best, even though we can't build it all in 1 year, the best case is to get going on it, file those grant applications. Hopefully they'll be issued so that you could start construction with phase 1 of the project this winter.
Leslie might
Yeah.
also mention it is coming from an upland source.
Yes, I didn't mention that. I do have a couple slides on that, but.
Okay, we'll
okay,
cover that.
All right, okay, all right. So this graph right here is meant, or the image here is meant to illustrate what we can do with the Nourishment, given
The amount of money that we have.
the match monies the town have, and assuming that the towns get the 1 and the 2 million grant awarded by CZM. So I'm going to walk you through this. So the yellow outline, minus the part at the bottom of the graph you can't see, is what we permitted for the whole project, Bay Ave and Garnet Road. This yellow sort of shaded polygon right here is what you could build with that grant monies and the match monies if we were to build the project following that design that I showed you a few slides ago, where we're going 90 feet wide and out 15 to 1 and up to elevation 11. What we know at Woods Hole Group is that we can optimize that design to make the project last longer if you have a different amount of money like we have. So this red dash line is an example of how we could optimize the design, extend it, protect more properties with a slightly modified design. So it wouldn't go so far seaward. Maybe we'd narrow that 90-foot berm up to 60 or something like that. So we're going to look at that once we figure out how much money is awarded, or if the awards are made, and optimize this design to provide the most benefit based on the money that's been awarded. We do know that just coastal engineering rule of thumb is that beach nourishment projects last longer the longer they are. So it's really in our best interest to try to narrow this up a little bit if we don't have as much money as we need, and lengthen it a bit. And so that will be the goal, as I said, to optimize the design so that we can get the best benefit out of this, you know, out of the money that's available. Okay, so that pretty much covers this slide. And then I have, okay, here's a schedule. So we're hoping again on the left to have the Army Corps of Engineers permits issued either in June or July of this year. And again, I think that will require some pressure from the towns in various ways.
And our residents should be calling our reps and senators.
That would really help. Yep. So I would, yeah, definitely recommend doing that.
At the federal or state one?
Doesn't hurt to do both, but
Yeah.
federal.
I figured it was federal since it's Army Corps.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear.
I know that at Duxbury Beach Reservation, they talked to Senator Markey's office to try to get some money for a project that they built this last winter.
Yeah,
So-
I'm sure our board will more than willing to put out another letter to both our senators
Yeah.
and reps.
The next, going along the schedule, and the next thing is for us to submit the CZM Coastal Resiliency Grant applications for both towns for construction funding. Those applications are due July 11th of this year. After that, assuming those grants are awarded, then in the fall, the towns would work with Woods Hole Group to update the construction plans, do a new survey, update the construction plans, and prepare bid packages that would then be sent out to contractors. The contractors would provide bids for the project, and then hopefully by October, the towns would be ready to select a contractor. and then we'd be ready to start construction on phase 1 by November. So there would be sand, assuming we could maintain this schedule, there'd be sand brought to the beach the whole time between November and March. And then this last bullet just shows that, there's continued construction in following out years. Now I have, I think, 3 slides that just answer some typical questions we get about this project, so I thought I would go through that, and then you can ask your own questions. So what type of sediment is going to be used for the nourishment? As I said before, the regulatory agencies require that we source material that matches what's on the beach now. So in the Bay Ave and Granite Road area, it's going to be a mixture of sand, gravel, and some cobble. Here's where I say that we are going to use upland sand that's going to be trucked to the site. That upland sand typically has a bit of a reddish sort of hue to it when it's first of all placed, but after a while it bleaches out and you can hardly tell the difference. And so this is an example, the 2 photographs on the left. The top one, this was down at Duxbury Beach Reservation, the project we built this winter at DBR. The top photo is the material that was brought in. You can see it kind of has a little reddish brown tint to it. And then after it's sort of washed and bleached out, the waves have sort of tumbled it a bit. It looks like the picture on the bottom. Okay, the next one I talked about already, what time of year will the project be constructed? We are allowed to work between September and March. I don't think with the grants, the way they're awarded, I don't think we'll be ready to start construction in September, but we're hoping sometime in November.
And Leslie, one thing to keep in mind, the source may need permits. So the upland source may need a earth removal permit, so on the time frame that might be.
Okay, that's a source that you are aware of, and,
I'm saying what source we use may need a permit.
okay, all right.
So that may take time in either Marshfield or Duxbury, depending on it. But I would suspect that we would apply as soon as we know we're getting a grant for CZM.
Got
Apply
it.
for those earth removal permits.
Okay, good point. Was that done for the DBR project?
It was, and actually they had to put a process in place, and once they did it, it was fairly quickly expedited.
Okay, good, all right. Because for that DBR project, they sourced the material from within the town of Duxbury somewhere, I don't quite know where it was.
By MoDOC?
Yeah, it was upland in that area, yes.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
all right. How will the sediment get to the beach? It's going to be trucked to the beach in tractor trailers and then dumped on the beach in a stockpile. Or possibly, if we can get DBR to allow us, we might use that northernmost parking lot they have at DBR and stockpile some materials there. And then it would be reloaded into end dumps. A picture of an end dump is sort of this big truck right here that you can kind of see. So those are trucks that can drive along the beach safely, and they carry a lot of material. They'd be loaded up and then drive down to the beach, and then the material would be spread using a front end loader according to the design that we optimize.
Oh, don't you mean the yellow truck on the bottom?
I do mean the yellow truck on the bottom.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's the tractor trailer that brings the material to the site. I'm so sorry. This is the end dump right here. Thank you. That's the one that can drive on the beach.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. How long will it take? We're expecting that we would be working, the whole time, November, December, January, February, March, 5 months. This says 2 to 4, but, that's dependent on when we can get going, but, if we get going and we can start working in November, it'd be almost 5 months. What volume of truck traffic can be expected? So it can bring about 3,000 cubic yards of material to the beach. So it's about 100 truckloads of sediment to the beach each day. Pretty similar to what was going on with the DBR project for any of you who lived in that area and saw the trucks going by.
Which in our case, it would be 139 Caswell Street to Canal Street.
Okay,
And then once it crosses the Rainbow Bridge, take a left onto Bay Ave
Yeah.
and go up to the ramp.
yeah, in Marshfield's case. And then in Duxbury, they'd be heading south on Gurnett Road.
Well, some of it will be
Yeah, some of
coming
it,
in
yeah,
as
yeah.
as well.
We'll be going both ways. And then I think this is the last last slide. So how long will the nourishment last? So we have engineering analyses that we've done that suggest that you're going to need to re-nourish these beaches about every 5 years. And that's based on calculations that show that 80% of the material that was placed in the original footprint has now migrated elsewhere. And you're only left with 20%. And so the engineering rule of thumb is that once you're left with just that 20%, that's when you need to go back in and do re-nourishment. Doesn't mean the material is completely gone from the beach, it's just migrated down the beach. So in the case of this project that we hope to do this winter, where we're placing most of the material in Duxbury at the northern end of the footprint, we know that the dominant direction of longshore transport is to the south in that area. So it will end up feeding those areas further to the south that are also in that permitted footprint. So it's not like it's lost, it's just sort of redistributed along shore and some goes a little bit offshore.
Listen, do you mind spending like 1 minute on why we went through the process of trying to get dredged material and why that wasn't available?
Yeah, sure. You mean from Green Harbor?
Right.
Yeah. Part of the grant that we have this year and actually a previous year was looking at the feasibility of taking the 20 to 30,000 cubic yards of material that's dredged from Green Harbor every year and dumped offshore in a nearshore disposal site that's roughly out here. So they just dump it out there and then we don't know where it goes. It certainly doesn't, it's not feeding the beach to any significant degree because the beach is significantly eroded. And so we spent some time talking to the Corps of Engineers and brainstorming ways in which that material, instead of putting it into that dredge and dumping it offshore, could we pump it to the beach? Because they used to do that several, 20, 30 years ago in Marshfield, right?
They did it.
Yeah. And the sediment characteristics of what's shoaling inside Green Harbor have changed over the years, and it's become much rockier and less sandy. So now it's got lots of cobble in it, and they can't pump hydraulically through a pipeline material that has big cobble in it. It just, the physics of that don't work.
Similar to what we found when we were pumping from the South River into the Wrexham Beach.
Yeah.
Over by the Marshfield Yacht Club.
Yeah. So hydraulic dredging and pumping directly to the beaches was out, or is out. We talked about stockpiling the material on the Marshfield side. I don't know what you call it, it's a big shoal. It's on the north side of the channel as you go in the harbor. So stockpiling it there. It's really the area where they work from when they do the dredging. So we talked about stockpiling there and driving it around, but the costs for that are significantly, increased because there's multiple times you have to handle the material. I will say too that the Corps of Engineers, they're mandated by the federal government to construct a project using the least cost alternative. So for them, the least cost alternative is to dredge it and dump it offshore. So all these other sort of extra steps that we're asking them to explore are things that would cost more, and the towns would have to pick up those costs. So those are the two things we looked at, Chris. We also looked at, and are still exploring in the last few weeks of this grant application, the ability to instead of having the Corps dump the material in the permitted open water disposal site, to dump it a little bit closer to shore than the permitted disposal site in hopes that it will find its way on shore just naturally. We wouldn't be able to get it into the nourishment footprint, so we can't get it as close, inside this yellow footprint here because of the draft constraints on the barge. So it needs 13 feet at mean low water, so it can't come in that close. But we'd like to get it in closer, and we are working with DMF and Natural Marine Fisheries to evaluate whether or not there are any sensitive resources out there. If they think that it can be done, it's something that we could evaluate and explore with the towns in another year. So hopefully that, yeah,
Absolutely, thank
okay.
you.
I mean, the only other thing I didn't talk about was the possibility of an open water borrow site. So what that is, you know, there's a, you know, if there's a reservoir of sand offshore that is suitable for this beach, you can get a bigger dredge than what, you know, the Corps of Engineers uses in Green Harbor and pump that material onto the beach
Through a private contract.
through a private contractor. It's similar to, I don't know if any of you go to Florida or the Carolinas, but it's similar to what they do down there. They build big beach nourishment projects with equipment like that.
However,
So,
Leslie, my understanding on that is the permitting for something like that is 5 to 10 years out.
I would say 5 years it takes to get a permit, a lot of investigations. I think CZM is trying to sort of push that initiative forward a bit, but, you know, so it may be coming. It's just, we can't count on it right now. So that may be a source of material in future years. Because we do think there is a pretty nice reservoir of sand offshore of sort of the Marshfield Duxbury town line, but much further out than this figure shows. That was a good question, Chris. I think the only other thing I was going to say was, you know, there are going to be impacts to water quality during the nourishment. And yeah, there'll be a little cloud of suspended sediment out there in the near shore area for a little while, but it will, you know, like a cloudy plume of water, but it will dissipate really quickly within a matter of days, and, you know, it won't be a problem. You can see sort of an example of what we saw at DBR down here in the bottom picture. So I think that's it.
So we have somebody online.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm willing to answer any questions, and Greg's going to help.
So first, Jim, just for your information, 16 people I counted in person, 25 people are on Zoom.
1625.
And we have someone from Brant Rock. Brant Rock was passed over for this study. We've talked about this multiple times in the past. Are the grants for beach nourishment the same as beach infrastructure? Would the state and town have competing priorities if we wanted to fix the jetty infrastructure on Brant Rock within the 2026 timeline? To me, that's a separate, that's an infrastructure versus a beach nourishment project. But that's something we can kick over to the state to see if they think that that's a competing grant. So that was kind of the question.
Okay, and I might start with that, and then if Jason wants to chime in, he can. But the CZM Coastal Resiliency Program is not likely to fund any sort of jetty reconstruction, because they're looking at, you know, green infrastructure, soft engineering type solutions. So they're not likely to permit reconstruction of that jetty. If that's an accurate statement, or?
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate. Also, I'd say that it's my understanding that the jetties are Army Corps of Engineers structures. So the Army Corps of Engineers would likely have to be the proponent for any type of project like that.
Yeah, I think they were also talking about they called it a jetty, but it's really a groin there at Brant Rock. It's sort of, it's a groin. Yeah, okay, anyways, I don't think a Corps of Engineer owns that structure, but I think that's what they're talking about. Were they talking about the jetty?
Well, they call it a jetty.
Okay, all right.
That goes out.
Okay, all right.
It has the function of.
I don't know who owns that structure, but maybe it's the Corps of Engineers, I don't know, but anyways, so, yeah, that's a separate sort of project.
Yep. And then the follow-up was, so are there no grants available for the jetty? That's something that would have to be investigated. That's not
Yeah.
covered under this grant.
Yeah,
And finally, on the funding on the town side, we have multiple things always in competition for any kind of funds. We'll have money needed for school roofs soon. We're going to have money for the people in the Ocean Bluff area. They're looking for revetment money. We have the continuation of seawall reconstruction heading, you know, further south around. So there are multiple things out there, and that's why it's important on the beach nourishment side to make sure we're squirreling away a little money at every annual town meeting, so there's always funds available when there's state grants that we can get beach nourishment on one of the permitted areas.
We are getting much tighter as each year is going by. We have 3 labor union contracts coming up this year. so that will be a change. And then also, we have increases in the retirement pension fund that the state has set up, so we'll have those increases as well. So that, Greg is right, there's a lot of competing ideas or wishes for a fixed amount of money.
Yes.
A question, this seems to be done, it's going to be done, as you say, in phases, and as it's done, it's going to be gradual. Is there any steps taken, how do you prevent the ocean now, if you go down with 100 trucks tomorrow and you dump sand, and there's a bad storm that night, is it going to take that sand away? I mean, how do you keep it there until you build it up high enough that it will sustain itself?
You can't, I mean, you can't really, there's no guarantee that, you know, there's not gonna be a big event come by and create a lot of erosion and loss.
I mean, not even a big event, all this would be is at high tide.
Just the natural erosion.
Yeah.
King tide.
Well, so the design is meant to prevent significant erosion during just high tides and king tide events.
No, that's when you have it built up to that design that you
Yeah.
want. The first 2 days.
I see what you're saying.
There's a
Okay.
bad high
Okay.
tide on the
Gotcha.
4th day.
Okay. So the contractors have tricks that they use.
That's what I'm asking, is there something, they take steps to protect it until
They
they?
will. So they sort of, at DVR, what they did was they built, we went pretty far out into the water, can't remember, I don't know what the dimensions were, but.
Yeah.
They built what we call a windrow out there. And it was sort of just a little, it was, well, a fairly big row of sand they brought in, and that sort of held the water off of the beach part where they were working. And they build that up, and so, you know, they have ways to deal with that to maximize longevity during
And
construction.
most of the sand we brought in by truck.
All of it.
Okay. Last question for me. When you get to the ends of your, the outline of what you're doing, whether it's to the north or the south, will it taper off?
Yes,
Like, okay, so almost like walking down a hill?
right,
Okay.
yeah. So taper in elevation and, in, you know, plan form.
And over time, that will spread out
Yeah.
wider and flatter for the whole area.
Yep. As you said, north to south.
Yeah.
Also, something to keep in mind, these are 8 to 10 year, at best, 8 to 10 years, and then we're gonna need to reinvest. When you go to Virginia or you go to Florida, it's every 5 years, whatever, they're coming and they're pumping in all kinds of sand and stuff. It's something that you have to constantly maintain in order to keep it, because there's a seawall and we can't go backwards.
Right.
We do have, we'll keep.
Martin Francis, Bay Avenue, Marshfield. A couple of things. First of all, you mentioned contacting our senators and our congressmen and whoever. I think it would behoove both Duxbury and Marshfield to make a list. 80% of the people don't know who to call. Greg, I will be happy to work with you. If you put that package together, I will distribute it to Bay Avenue. And number one, I want to thank you for what, the whole board, for what you've done so far. Chris, this is to you. Chris, you know, as well as the people in Duxbury, there's a possibility of a seawall being built. How will the possibility of a seawall being built, and how are you working in conjunction with the sand that's being delivered? We don't want both things to happen at the same time. That would be catastrophic. Also, the 900 feet of the Bay Avenue section, as Paul was alluding to, which is 16 homes. If you go with the other plan, which is the red line, and you go further left of north and south, not so deep, how many feet would that be, and how many homes would that cover, as opposed to the 16 that is the present plan?
Same. I'm going to answer those in the backwards order, and then I'll let
Okay.
Chris. So in reverse order. So we only have permits to nourish in front of 16 properties.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're not going to be expanding that. So this red dash line covers all of those 16 properties.
Right there, so you see
Right.
it goes to the same point. It's
Yeah.
just narrower versus wide.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah. Okay, and then seawall and the nourishment. Do you want to take a stab? You want me to?
Well, I'll start it,
Okay.
and you'll probably have to finish, but what we're doing is, there's two different ways of looking at the seawall and the beach nourishment, both of which are obviously in baskets and need to move forward. One side of it is the financial, which have, as Greg said, competing interests. We have to work out all of that, the borrowing, the betterments, and everything else. And then there's the engineering side of it. You know, the idea is that we were going to do the beach nourishment initially after the seawall was done, so that you could basically have the construction done and not have to do that construction in an already sort of renourished area. But the way we're going to have to do this in phases, it actually made us rethink it. And now, basically, the hope is that the seawall can be funded in the next year or so with the borrowing and the betterments. And at that point, already 1 year of the sand, the renourishment would have taken place. And then following that, you'd have 3 more years of beach nourishment. So however they do the sort of logistics of that, that's beyond my pay grade, but that's why we have people like Leslie. We have an engineer that's working with us, Pat Brennan from Pat Brennan Engineering, and we may have some other specialists help us with those types of logistical questions.
Thank you. Peggy, to piggyback on my question, can somebody make the list that I requested?
I'm sure we can, on the town side, come up with a list of who.
I'll distribute them. And you indicated,
So you just want a list of who our
I
senators
want
and
to be able to distribute to everybody on Bay Avenue, everybody that's affected. You just indicated that you want the powers to be, we'll call them, to vote in favor of the grant from the Army Corps of Engineers. The more phone calls that are made, the better the possibility is, but get us the list. I know you could say to us,
It's
we'll look them up in
not
the
the
paper.
grant, it's the Army Corps signing the permit.
That's correct, well, that's what I'm alluding to. But you indicated you want us, which is great.
Yes, we can.
To
we
make
can do
those
that.
phone
We can do
calls.
that. It's just a
Get the
simple
list,
list of
Greg, I'll
grants.
come to your office and pick it up.
I can do that for Duxbury.
Oh, not tomorrow, I didn't mean that.
I can do
No, I
that.
don't mean that.
Your way out.
On my way out. I like that better.
I think there were some questions over on this side, too.
Yeah, Don Norris from Ocean Road North in Duxbury. I got a notification yesterday on my phone that the NOAA has released $2.6 billion towards coastal resiliency that is just starting to come out. So hopefully we can piggyback on some of that and get some money towards things to help us along. Also, I was wondering, while I watched the Duxbury Beach Reservation Nourishment project go on, how is that performing now based upon what you expected?
Yeah, it looks great to us. I mean, we went out there surveying, and it's performing well, and we're pleased with it, really pleased with it.
I mean, you look down the beach and it really doesn't look like it's changed the grade all that much.
Yeah, it has, and the dune has been built up, so, when we brought in almost, just, I think, 90,000 cubic yards for that project. And it's built according to design and performing well, so.
And that material is the similar material that's going to be used on the beach?
That's the idea, yes.
Because there was some pretty good sized cobbles in that
Yep,
stuff.
yep, you can expect that. I want to make sure people have the proper expectations for that. This is not going to be a beautiful, white, sandy Florida beach. There's going to be some cobble and some gravel in it, because that's what's there now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, the beach is fairly high right now.
Yeah.
It's come back quite a bit,
Yeah,
but it's all rocks.
yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Make good on Bay Ave. I am questioning that the fill you're bringing in, where is it coming from? And have we tested the water prior to bringing it in and after the effect? Because you're talking about iron being in that, and iron has an effect on iron causes algae to grow. The more algae you have grow, it will kill the marine life. And then we don't like algae. Anyone who's on Bay Ave, and we have all that seaweed all over, and everyone complains, that's what the iron's going to do that's all that fill. We're gonna have more growth, and we're gonna hurt our fishing industry. So we need to be testing prior to that going in, and I'm not talking about the quick that they do for the E. coli, I'm talking about a full panel testing. That's what I think. I'm not against, I think it's a great idea, I think we need the fill, but where's the fill coming from? Because when you affect one thing, it affects something else. When you touch something, you touch something else. And my other thing I have, my heart goes out to anyone who's on the seawall, but I'm not, and I have no flooding problems. So when you build up that, is that going to affect where I am? Do we know how that's going to affect the dead end of Bay Ave? Because we don't have any problems. Our beach has naturally grown. I walk the beach every day. Our beach is filled, and we're getting more sand every day. Last year, the town of Marshfield took sand off along the jetty, and they took it and they used it to fill in to build up the lifeguard stands, because we have so much over near the jetty. It's naturally filling up over near us. We have no seawall. I mean, that is the Corps of Engineer. The seawall wasn't maybe the best thing at one time. So I just want to make sure that with this, do we know the effect that this is going to have long term between the algae growth and how it's going to affect the dead end?
Yeah, so in terms of impacting the beaches north of this footprint that you see here, I'm assuming that's what you're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah,
Going
so
towards
those
the channel.
beaches are, and one of the reasons why we didn't extend the nourishment footprint up there is because those beaches they have much less trouble with erosion. We don't need to nourish those beaches. You've got a nice sediment surplus there, partly because it's being built up and held by the jetty. This project, it's certainly not going to decrease the sediment that's there. If anything, it might add a little bit more sediment to that area. Because there are times when even though I say the net direction of longshore transport is to the south, there are times when it is to the north. And so some of this material will spread, and it will likely be added to your beach. So, I would view that as a positive. In terms of testing the sediment, we are required to test the physical characteristics of the sand, but provided that it has less than 10% fines, which it has to have in order to go on the beach. We're not required to do any chemistry testing on that sand.
But how about the water? I'm concerned about the ocean water.
Yeah.
We're bringing in foreign substance that wasn't on a beach.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So we don't know the long-term effect it's going to have on the sea life there. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a great fishing industry right there. Are we going to affect that long-term? You've already said it you have iron in the sand. The iron, anyone knows, iron causes algae growth. Algae growth, and we're bringing in a ton of sand.
Yeah.
Are we going to have, you already said we're not going to have pristine beaches with sand. Now we're going to have algae all in the water? I mean, is it long-term? I know we need something, but are we going to hurt ourselves? I know in the long term, you're sitting there saying it's going to cost more money to get it from it really should be coming from what we dredge, because that's already natural. It really is, it's common sense. But are we going to have more of a problem long term and spend more money trying to fix what that we thought we were fixing because we made the problem?
Yeah, there's no indication that by bringing in material from the upland that we're going to have any adverse impacts on the marine, the water quality of the marine environment. On the sea life, it's not going to increase algae growth.
Do we have iron in the sand?
I don't think there's any evidence that iron causes increased algae growth or increased seaweed growth.
I did the research, and it says it all with marine biology, and all the Corps of Engineers, they all say causes. So that's,
I also think that, and know that, all the agencies and the Corps of Engineers, they're reviewing these permits, and they're not going to issue a permit if they think there's going to be an adverse impact on marine life. They've got comments from National Marine Fisheries, so again, we've never seen any evidence that bringing in material from the upland is going to cause any sort of adverse impacts to the marine water quality or increase algae growth. So, I believe that Corps of Engineers and other agencies would agree with that.
So I think,
Leslie, so hypothetically, if we remove the seawalls and we remove the houses, the beach is going to start moving inland because of the natural process. The hills, so like Fourth Cliff and Hummerock, were feeding the beach because it was a big sand deposit from the glaciers. All the hills in Marshfield and Duxbury are similar glacial material. So it's cobble, it's sand, it's other things all mixed together. That material would naturally occur over time if there was no seawall and no houses. So all we're doing is moving some of that material by truck and putting it in front of the seawall. So just keep that in mind on the overall scheme of things. This would occur naturally if we did not have a seawall and structures in behind them.
so I just think that maybe if we tested the water, we would know in 5 years that was, we're sure that worked, that the water is the same water that we had today, that we have in 5 years, that we haven't hurt our water system. We do have a fishing industry. We do.
Yeah,
That we can't afford to hurt anymore.
yeah, no, I agree with that. Jason, do you have something to add to this?
Yeah, I would just say that in coastal marine ecosystems, typically it's nitrogen that is the issue leading to algae growth and eutrophication. In some open water systems, iron can be an issue, but you don't see that in coastal waters because there's so much ambient nitrogen just within the system. So that's why in places down on the Cape and in Buzzards Bay, there's so much of an emphasis on addressing nitrogen to address coastal water qualities. So I would not anticipate a very small amount of iron in beach nourishment material to contribute to coastal eutrophication at all.
Do we have any? Okay.
Hi, Jim Ryan, Bay Ave. I've been on Bay Ave in Duxbury for a long time. I'm questioning why you say that there's bird life along the seawall when there is none. Why can't we work all summer long? There's no nesting, we see a few seagulls. Why can't we work year round?
Well, because the permits gave us what we call a time of year restriction. And that was based on, there is the toe of the nourishment that's proposed or permitted does fall within an area that's mapped by the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as habitat for endangered shorebirds. So they're foraging out there, they're swimming, they're flying around and foraging out there. We're going to be working in that area if we build the toe as far as we permitted here on this diagram. And so they were the ones that recommended that time of year restriction to protect the shorebirds.
Also, you did mention the jetty a few moments ago. What studies have been done, if any, and why not, if not, to extend the jetty? Because we all know, north of the 16 houses, the beach is wonderful because the jetty protects it. Why can't we extend the jetty to protect other areas south of those 16 houses?
The Corps of Engineers is doing a study that, is looking at alternatives for reducing shoaling in Green Harbor so that they don't have to come back in and dredge so often.
Yeah.
It does include looking at different configurations for, I believe, the northern jetty.
Yep.
And length.
And length,
Right.
right. I don't, I haven't looked at it specifically, but by increasing the length of that southern jetty, you're not gonna get any more sediment because there is no source of sediment to the south. There's no source of it, so it's not gonna, even if you built that jetty way out, you're not gonna get a bigger beach in front of your house because there's nothing to feed it. It's sediment starved.
Yeah, but it's not gonna get torn away in all the nor'easters all winter long.
Well,
When I first
hopefully
moved
with
there, I
the
could jump off the
added,
seawall 3 feet.
Yeah.
Now it's 14 feet.
and with the added height, so not only are they talking about extending and possibly narrowing, they're also talking about making this jetty higher.
And that would be helpful.
And that would help in the storm.
But it should be longer as well. Because it's proven by the northern homes on that beach have a wonderful beach.
Well, they're looking at different alternatives, so
So
we can stay tuned for that.
we should be writing to the Corps of Engineers. and getting them
To move that along, yes.
move
And
that
the
along.
The harbor master has been working on that for a long time.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Has this project been done before, like in any other New England beaches over the years? And do you see any results and see how successful?
Yep, we've nourished, at the company where I work, we've been involved with, probably 20 or so beach nourishment projects in New England, and, some are more successful than others, certainly. That has to do with, a lot of factors, but it's definitely a proven way of providing resiliency for the coastline.
So it's not, we're not the.
You're not
the
guinea pigs.
Yeah, okay.
We got 4 more questions. Come on.
Okay.
Why wasn't beach nourishment considered for Brant Rock Beach? Is it available to public? Parking is nearby for the public.
Okay, so we did look at Brant Rock in that very first year of the CZM grant to see which beaches were appropriate and viable for beach nourishment. And so we did not pick the Brant Rock area because, in our opinion, our ability to design something that would have any sort of lifetime at all beyond a year was very minimal. So just the conditions there, the wave approach, the water depths, make it a place where beach nourishment is really not a viable solution.
Is there any of the $1 million funding from Marshfield going towards Fieldston side, or is it all going into Duxbury?
So the million, if the grant is awarded to Marshfield, that money will be used to nourish the Bay Ave sections in front of those 16 homes in Bay Ave. It will not be used to further the permitting for Fieldston or Sunrise.
What was the hurdle for excluding Sunrise Beach? That one was basically, we could not get the residents to sign the easements. We tried for over 2 years. And then there's one more.
That makes no sense at all.
Where is the new sand coming from?
Nothing happens. That's pathetic.
Can you answer that one?
Sure.
I mean, we don't have a source picked out yet. More than likely, it will be an upland source. If we can find something from some development site in Marshfield or Duxbury, that would be ideal, because then we're going to get it cheaper, because the trucking distances are much shorter.
Hey, can we get together, or can you point me to the right person? How much money the town of Marshfield and the state have paid out for beaches and seawalls? Can we break it down by beaches? I would like to showcase how much Ocean Bluff has received in comparison to Brant Rock, so that's not really a question. Can you repeat the questions? I can't hear it on Zoom. The same holds true for Brant Rock Beach and Brant Rock Jetty. Why won't the harbor master work with the residents in Brant Rock on its jetty? Were wave attenuating devices ever considered?
Yeah, that's the only one of those questions I'm qualified to answer. We did look at wave attenuation devices like nearshore reefs, and they may provide some benefit in that area, but this particular project we were working on was focused on identifying places for beach nourishment, and then proceeding with the design and permitting of the beach nourishment. If the town wants to pursue some sort of nearshore reef or something out there, then that's a different project that could be looked at later. But I will say that you can build a nearshore reef out there all you want. You're not going to build a beach behind it, because there's no source of sediment coming in. So you could build a nearshore reef and then nourish behind it potentially, but just by building a reef by itself is not going to magically make a beach appear there.
And last one is, according to your multi-hazard mitigation plan, you're coming back to Brant Rock to review high tide, ? Why wouldn't the jetty be considered a beach nourishment?
A don't understand the question. I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know if we said in the multi-hazard mitigation plan we're going to come back and look at high tide. I don't know. Maybe we can, I don't know who that is, but we
Grand
can.
Rock Association.
Okay, we can,
We will hear more.
yeah, explore that question a little bit more another time.
It says in her report, they will be looking at high tide, high water every 10 years. Again, we'll wait, and I'm sure we'll get them more information.
Okay.
Any other questions in the room?
Nancy Mahoney, Foster Ave. I've been following this over the past 3 years, and I see that our neighborhood did not sign the easement, so we were locked out of this project. I'm just concerned going forward. Do you have an advocacy group of us as residents of the town and the neighborhoods where we could work together to try to get that done? Because
The
if
good
that
model
took 2
was
years
the-
and people aren't doing it, because I know I did it twice.
The Green Harbor people did go door to door. They assisted the selectmen and me and the assistant planner, and we went door to door to the last few people to get signatures.
The problem
So
in our
if
neighborhood
we-
is there's a lot of rental properties, there's been a lot of resale of properties. You know, it's hard to actually get the owner, you know, so.
Don't we know it?
No, but I mean, it's like, you know, it's really, really important. Like, are you working forward, like, this is great that this part is happening, but is there Plan B already in the works since all this permitting takes like 5 years? Are we already trying to permit and try to restart to get these signatures done and, you know, start from basically square one again for Fieldston and Sunrise? Because
So
I mean, it's
on the town side,
on us as residents and us
at
working
any
with you.
time, residents can continue to send in easements. We'll put them in the file, and when we have everybody, then I can go to the selectmen and say, I need some money to hire Woods Hole Group to go back and start re-permitting for Sunrise and Fieldston Beach.
But I don't
And then
think
we would go to
we
CZM,
cannot do
and that would be.
anything. You know, like, I think that we can't leave it on the residents because we have to work together with the town and the residents. Do you know what I'm saying? Because if
And
we
on the
could say,
town
oh,
side-
nobody did it, so that
On the town
means
side,
we
we
have
have
nothing.
tried repeatedly. If we don't have the resident support, we can't do this. So unfortunately, to some degree, it is on the residents. Because on our side, I'm the town planner, I'm not the beach nourishment person. A lot of my time has been spent on this project to move this forward. I have other things that I am supposed to be responsible
No,
for
I
and working
understand
on.
that.
Let me ask a different question, but related. With the investment that's been made by the town of Marshfield, plus outside, government agencies on the seawalls, and the importance of the beach renourishment project and protecting that investment.
Which was the purpose of the beach nourishment,
Right.
to
Well, let me-
protect that
right,
seawall.
Exactly, important, right?
Right.
Okay, where does eminent domain come in?
The what?
Why do you need somebody's permission?
So, yeah, we need the easements because the Chapter 91 regulations say that anytime you're using public dollars to fund beach nourishment using dredged material, honestly, for beach nourishment, then they have to sign over easements saying that the public has the right to pass in that Commonwealth tidelands.
But you're not on their property. It's not,
In some cases, it is not on their property.
Right.
But there are some cases where it is.
Yeah.
And our legal counsel and our select board had made the decision, instead of going eminent domain and having lawsuits that could take years, to go the easement route, which is why we went the easement route. We tried the first year, CZM gave us additional money to go back, and we tried a second year again to get the residents. We were not able to get the residents to all sign the easements, and that's where we are at the moment.
Yeah, fine.
Again, if residents fill out their easements for those two beaches and get it into us, I can then make a case, talk to Leslie, talk to the selectmen, and then we all go to CZM. But that's several years away, to be honest.
I have a question. You have a list of who signed and who didn't on Foster Ave?
We have a list.
Can we get that list?
We have given it in the past.
Because
Who'd you give it
he
to?
mailed it out once, he mailed it out to everybody we could get a hold of, to get people to
I
sign it. We don't know half the owners.
I know you did,
Yeah.
but it didn't happen.
Well,
So if we could walk around with that easement.
and bring a notary
It
with
sounds
us?
like
That's
that's
what
what
I
you
did.
That's
posted,
what
and
they
it
did.
sounded like
That's
you
right.
helped him with that
Oh,
as
yeah,
well.
and
The problem is.
Mr.
we-
Complaint was,
I want nothing to do with myself.
The problem is we have so many people that don't live there.
I
Yeah,
see
why
that's,
can't live
that's
off
the
them? It's the
problem.
owner.
Getting it when the people are there
But
is
some of
the
them never
biggest
come.
problem. We were lucky because when we hit them, they were all there.
Yeah.
The owners happened to be there when we did our, and these guys set it up
Saturday
that
morning
that
at 10
was
o'clock.
the case.
Do you want to come help us?
They knew we were coming.
Well, like free barbecue or
It took a
something.
while, it took a while, but I give them credit. They showed up with Mike Maresco. And we walked in every doorway that they didn't sign. I had informed them 4 or 5 days earlier, we're gonna be here at 10 o'clock. We need your signature. I explained the situation, and lo and behold, they were there.
Well,
And it
how
took a
many-
while, but I know in your case, we had 16 homes to go to, and fortunately, we probably, prior to that Saturday, had maybe 50%. And Mike Maresco was very nice, being what's the word I'm looking for? A notary. So he notarized them right then and there, and everything was a piece of cake after that, and I thank him.
And what's the percentage of easement signatures do you need? 70?
100.
100.
100.
Have to have 100?
One person doesn't sign, it's a dead duck.
Really?
Okay.
One.
We're gonna grab those people from Alaska. over here.
I know.
I know.
All right.
No, but they.
Any more questions?
He sent his in.
What is the easement for?
It's to allow the public to pass and, you know, Commonwealth tidelands that are nourished using public funds.
And the easement is only from the seawall out? It is not access on your yard or property to get to the beach?
Right.
Or anything else? It is just for the placement of material, not just sand, from the seawall outward towards the ocean.
And to allow the public to pass or sit on that part of the beach.
Since they paid for it.
Yeah.
Great, any other
That's
questions?
it.
Ingrid? Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's great that you're interested. I know it's a huge challenge down there. You know, if you can lasso them down to the last few, I promise you that, you know, I as a select board member will come and do the same thing for your
We
neighborhood.
have a
No,
neighbor
but I mean, I was on the coastal advisory committee after 91. You know, we did a lot in the town to get, we did a lot of work under Doris Crary. We did a lot, and I did go door to door with a lot of things, but we have to know who the people are that we need to contact. We need to make them aware of the seriousness. But the problem is, if you're knocking at the door and it's someone that's renting the property, you know, we're lost. And if it's just that one person, that's the one to make it not be a deal. It's a
Well,
deal breaker.
you've got an excellent source here that's already done it.
Well, we've got
And
a
we
lot
didn't
more.
carry any guns.
Yeah, we've got a lot
guns.
more.
Are you
And I want
important
to
today?
thank everyone for coming here on Zoom
We'll cut you
and
dead.
coming here in person, so without.
How about a note in the tax bill? Here's an example. He just said, if a note was in the tax bill, because Marshfield sends a tax bill to everybody, you
Right.
alluded to somebody in Alaska,
Right.
that's a great idea, that this, you need those signatures. It's just another way of communicating with the homeowners. A note in the tax bill. Makes sense.
But if it goes out to every resident.
No, no, I
It would be
would.
overwhelming.
No, I didn't mean that,
What's
Greg.
going on?
If there's a list already in the envelope you're alluding to, that those, now you have, hypothetically, you need 100.
It's a great idea, but I think stuffing tax bills
Okay,
is
all right,
gonna
okay.
be problematic for us.
I'll do it.
It was just a suggestion.
It's a great suggestion, but I think
Okay.
tax bills, I know exactly.
I'll leave it alone.
So once again, thanks everyone very much for coming, and I'm gonna close the meeting.
Thank you.
You don't think you stay in touch? All right, nice job. I'm gonna check with Leslie.